We finally reached episodes that first aired after I was born, and I'm at the age when I'm starting not to care that parts of my body are no longer functioning properly. So you shouldn't care about all the spoilers in this video.
Today, Scooby-Doo meets the Three Stooges.
After getting run off the road by a Batmobile, which is technically one episode too early, the gang are forced to look for help at a nearby tourist trap. What they find are the Three Stooges who need help instead. Amos, Crunch, and Rhino, the manager and caretaker of a ghost town amusement park, discovered uranium in an abandoned mine under their employer's property. The two decided to excavate the valuable element and smuggle it over the border to illegally sell it. The park in question was owned by the famous comedy trio, the Three Stooges. At the time this episode was produced, all three of the Stooges featured were still alive, but did not provide their voices, despite having done so for an earlier animated version of themselves just a few years earlier. As a testament to their enduring popularity, even today most are familiar with the Three Stooges. But Curly Joe here confused me as a kid. This was not Curly Howard, arguably the most famous Stooge who pioneered the nyuk 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 and Soitenly. This was Curly Joe Dorita, one of several replacement Stooges the group used over the years after the untimely death of the original Curly. One of those other third Stooges, Joe Besser, would go on to voice several Hanna-Barbera characters himself, including the most annoying one who wasn't Scrappy. More on him in a future video. With the emphasis on moron. To help keep their mining operation secret, Crunch and Rhino used sabotage.
Sabotage? How? When?
To drive away visitors from the ghost town, including repeatedly setting loose the animal attractions.
Come back here, Ngagi. Watch out, dummies.
Ngagi is Swahili for gorilla. But that's an orangutan. They also play a loud roar from a mechanical Tyrannosaurus Rex that shakes the entire town, and release a gunslinger automaton to shoot up the place. This episode's villain plot is almost entirely a rehash of the Miner 49er scheme, including the ghost town setting and a valuable underground resource, so no points for originality. What should not be glossed over is that the resource in question here is uranium. Uranium. The stuff used to make nuclear weapons. Though we never learn in the episode if the material Crunch and Rhino mined was suitable for enrichment.
This mine dust is sure funny. It glows in the dark.
Uranium doesn't glow in the dark, and the element by itself isn't generally harmful to humans as our skin is thick enough to protect against the radiation emitted by the heavy metal. But uranium dust, if inhaled, could absolutely be considered harmful, possibly even carcinogenic. Mo Howard died of lung cancer. Just saying. Who would be in the market to purchase unlicensed, illegally sourced uranium? Typically, rogue states or terrorists. Remember how Doc Brown got hold of his plutonium? Suddenly, Crunch and Rhino don't seem to be the typically harmless Scooby-Doo villains, do they? When the Soviet Union collapsed, it left behind a multitude of unguarded nuclear sites ripe for smugglers to pick clean, forcing the world community to take more comprehensive steps to safeguard against such acts. Crunch and Rhino's operation took place in the early 1970s, long before the dissolution of the USSR, making it slightly easier for them to fly under the radar. Yes, bats use sonar, not radar, but I'm sticking with that pun. Crunch and Rhino were still guilty of a big league federal crime, though undoubtedly the deep pockets of countries friendly to terrorism would make the potential reward for the uranium smugglers among the highest of all Scooby-Doo villain plots. So Crunch and Rhino get a 4 out of 5 for the design. As befitting the ghost town setting, Crunch and Rhino chose their disguises using a Western motif, with Crunch dressing up as a gunslinger and Rhino as a Native American chief. One of them also dressed as an inflatable cactus at one point, predating by several decades, the wacky inflatable tube man used outside car dealerships. The gunslinger is unique, but this is the second time in Scooby-Doo that a white guy dressed up as a Native American. Surprisingly, and even a little confusingly, neither the gunslinger nor the chief is ever identified or considered a ghost by the gang or the Stooges. In fact, nothing implies any supernatural element to this caper.
Look! Look! Look!
Ghosts!
Though it's not like the gang didn't try. At best, we get a Westworld moment with the malfunctioning gunslinger attraction, but like Charlie the Robot, that's science gone wrong again. Not a wandering spirit. Most baffling, though, is the escape vehicle chosen by Crunch and Rhino. If the purpose was smuggling uranium ore over the border, why would you pick something that looks like a parade float designed by Wednesday Addams? Or between this and the giant mechanical dinosaur, maybe the producers were just really eager to get to the Batman and Robin episode. Regardless, these bland, boring, scare-free outfits get a mere 2.5 out of 5. When it comes to the operation of their scheme, Crunch and Rhino were really doing it half-assed. Perhaps not even a quarter-assed. While the recorded dinosaur roar, gunslinger's gunfire, and the Native American chief's war cry cleverly served double duty both as a way to scare off visitors as well as to cover the sounds of their secret mining operation, everything else done by Crunch and Rhino was either short-sighted or just plain dumb.
These kids did it. They found a tape recorder inside the dinosaur.
And Mr. Crunch destroyed the tape.
After originally avoiding suspicion by apparently destroying his own dinosaur recording after the gang found it, Crunch somehow attracts Velma's attention enough for her to follow him. Maybe it's his all-green outfit. After all, the gang had a lot of bad experiences with people dressed like that. Instead of confronting the nosy teen girl and asking why she was following him, Crunch made the biggest cardinal sin of Scooby-Villain mistakes by...
Hold it. We've got a bigger problem. Velma's disappeared.
Come on, spread out. Let's find her.
She's right there behind you, Fred. Meanwhile, Rhino, disguised as the Native American chief, tries to kill Curly Joe with a poorly timed tomahawk chop. Apparently, he never saw Three Stooges short because a swing like that would have had no chance of hurting any of them. Those guys were tanks.
Did you happen to see a girl about 2 inches high with glasses?
Nope. Oops.
What? Did you happen to see a girl about 2 inches high? Is Curly Joe making fun of Velma for being short? That's rich coming from him. Despite regular poor animation, Hanna-Barbera occasionally gets things right in odd ways. For example, the height of the Three Stooges. They look comically short next to everyone else, but this checks out as Moe, Larry, and Curly Joe were only 5'4" in real life. Just like me. While looking for Velma, the Three Stooges are scared away by Crunch in his gunslinger getup, though he's clearly not wearing a mask at this point, so it's lucky for him the Three Stooges are so stupid, or the game would have been up right then and there.
I got news for you. So am I.
Me too. To Passaic, New Jersey.
Oh, no, you don't.
If I spent all my time focusing on early Scooby-Doo production mistakes, there wouldn't be any time to discuss the villains. But this one, where the Stooges start running from off the border of the background art because the producers didn't have someone paint anything longer, seems cheap even by Hanna-Barbera standards. Fred and Daphne, meanwhile, search the desert outside the town for their missing friend, and are accosted by one of the villains dressed as a cactus. Probably Rhino, as Crunch was back in town dressed as the gunslinger. This is another baffling moment as the walking cactus acts more like a middle school prankster than a villain desperate to run people off the scene of his crime. He just slightly messes with the two teenagers by drinking their water and tapping them on the backs. Even Carl the stuntman acted more aggressively. F***ing Carl the stuntman.
Wait, Freddy, don't! only a mirage.
Come back and fight like a man, you vegetable!
Fred isn't coming across very competently in this episode, is he?
This desert reminds me of a woman.
Why's that?
It goes on and on and on.
Man.
Come on, Daff. Where's your sense of humor?
You sexist prick. Neither villain seems willing to wear an actual mask to hide their identity, and no, red face makeup doesn't count as a mask. And the only steps taken by Crunch and Rhino to establish an alibi is rigging up two extremely unconvincing dummies of themselves playing cards. Where's Dr. Najib when you need him? In the end, the two villains' escape is even thwarted by their own mechanical dinosaur, capping off a poorly managed operation. 1.5 out of 5. This leaves Crunch and Rhino with a do score of 2.7 out of 5. They had a good plan, but everything else they did was garbage.
Garbage.
The monster always turns out to be an eensy-teensy 6-inch harmless lizard.
You're still talking about the monster, right, Velma?
Crazy Bat? All of a sudden she's calm as a mouse again.
Dingbat only went crazy when Crunch came near her.
The uranium dust on Crunch's clothes fouled her radar.
Fred was incompetent in this episode, but Velma didn't make a good showing either. As I said before, bats don't use radar. They use sonar. Regardless, uranium doesn't affect bats in any way. In fact, thousands of abandoned uranium mines in the western United States are actually being used by the government as habitats for bats. Bat habitats. Babitats. Habibats? Batbitats.
Say, Sheriff, would it be okay if I took home this little bag of uranium as a souvenir?
Why, sure, son.
Is that really up to the sheriff to decide? The whole reason Crunch and Rhino went through all that hassle was because of federal regulations for the handling of uranium. An officer ignore the law here, just lets any random beatnik walk away with a bag full?
Today, Scooby-Doo meets Batman and Robin.
Once again, a mystery machine malfunction leaves the gang in the perfect spot to intercept some trouble. It's another counterfeiting ring, but this time they're joined by Batman and Robin. Little old Mrs. Baker smuggled counterfeit money into the country hidden inside Punch Clown dolls. She then sold the fake $5 and $10 bills to Joker and Penguin, who then passed on the phony currency through the rides and refreshment stands at the Gotham City amusement park. So despite being arguably two of Batman's most dangerous villains, Joker and Penguin are little more than henchmen in Mrs. Baker's counterfeit scheme. Where do I even begin? This plan doesn't make any sense for either set of the villains in terms of the potential financial rewards. The real cash Mrs. Baker was getting from Joker and Penguin had to be far less than the total face value of the counterfeit money inside those clown dolls she was sending them, and why were Gotham's two biggest crooks wasting so much time by slowly passing fake bills through roller coaster and nacho sales?
Holy harlequins!
Why, it's just a punch clown.
An amusing toy.
You'd think by this stage of his crime-fighting career, Batman would have a different reaction to clown-shaped objects.
Oh, Scooby, you broke his head off.
Zoinks! Like, never mind the head, look at the bread!
For the sake of argument, if the doll was stuffed with $1 million in fake bills, the most Mrs. Baker could have expected to receive from Joker and Penguin would have been around $200,000. That's about $1.5 million in today's money, so not bad. The thing is, there's no way that doll was stuffed with anywhere near that amount. Setting aside if all of it would even fit in the space of the doll, $1 million in $10 bills would weigh well over 200 pounds, while that same amount in $5 bills would weigh twice as much. As easily as Batman tosses the doll and Scooby knocks it over, it barely weighs anything at all, meaning it was very lightly stuffed.
Someone telephoned us last week and told us to leave some real cash under our doormat.
After that, every morning on our doorstep there was a crate with a clown in it, full of phony 5s and 10s.
Joker says they left real money under their doormat in exchange for the fake money. It would have been extremely difficult to leave more than a few $1,000s in cash safely in that location, so extrapolating from there, the two villains probably didn't receive anything over $15,000 in counterfeit currency. Does this seem like enough to justify the expense of printing the bills, flying them over the border, rigging a house to flip upside down, and securing all of those clown dolls to stuff with money? Especially considering they seem to be limiting their scheme to the amusement park. How many rides and hot dogs needed to be sold to pass all that fake money? It's also not a good idea to concentrate all of your counterfeit bills in a single location because it just makes it that much easier for the authorities to pinpoint the origin of the phony currency. During this phase of the Batman comics, Joker was still considered a comical prankster, and for him the idea of passing fake money through an amusement park would probably be enough to explain his actions. But Penguin has always been in it for the money. It's unlikely that he would have been interested in such a scheme. Then again, it's also possible he was tricked or forced to participate by Joker, and knowing how much of his time was being wasted may explain why Penguin seemed to be in such a foul mood during the entire episode.
Obviously, the phony money is shipped from this warehouse inside those clowns.
If we don't stop him from flooding the money market with crooked cash, it'll undermine our national economy.
Most copies of the dynamic Scooby-Doo affair, including mine, omit footage that could have made Mrs. Baker's whole criminal enterprise make sense. In a deleted scene which takes place after the gang and the dynamic duo chase the hooded man into the toy warehouse, Velma and Batman discuss the economic danger of allowing so much counterfeit currency to flood the market. It's unknown why this scene was deleted from official releases, as it doesn't seem to contain anything that would be objectionable by censors or even DC's lawyers. If I had to pick a reason, it would be that in this scene, Batman surmises the dolls were stuffed with fake money and shipped off from the warehouse they were currently in, despite it being said earlier that the money was smuggled from another country already inside the dolls. Why the studio would care about removing a plot hole when so much of the episode was already filled with stuff that didn't make any sense is beyond me, but it's the only thing I could come up with. We don't actually need the deleted scene to conclude that the only way Mrs. Baker's plot makes any sense is if she was an operative for a foreign nation determined to undermine our economy through massive counterfeiting.
A masterpiece of duplication, except for one tiny slip-up.
What's that, Batman?
President Lincoln never wore a turtleneck sweater.
Considering how badly drawn the money was, according to Batman, it seems reasonable that a foreign country with less access to talented artists might churn out such obvious low-quality bills. That, or they were drawn by moonlighting Hanna-Barbera animators. Mrs. Baker's design gets a 2 out of 5, but only because I'm working the foreign agent angle. The hooded man was literally wearing the same outfit as Mrs. Baker, while Joker and Penguin always wear their disguises. That's who they are. They're supervillains. That's already enough to scare people away. If you live in or near Gotham City and you see someone who looks like a clown or 19th century fop heading your way, you're already conditioned to scream and scatter by that point. Why would Joker or Penguin even bother with the skeleton costumes? Nobody gets anything for their outfits in this episode. 1 out of 5. As mentioned before, the design of the scheme was very dumb, so Mrs. Baker and her 2 super henchmen were already working from a deficit. We learned from Joker that they only began spreading the fake money a week earlier, and they're already under arrest.
You may take them away.
Right. Hold it. He meant the other way around.
It's starting to become apparent why everyone Batman locks up seems to be out on the street a week later.
Yikes!
Look at that!
Everything's fishy. A plane without lights making a delivery in the middle of the night.
It took me watching this twice to realize that all of this is supposed to be happening at night. The smuggling portion of Mrs. Baker's plan was flawless, as it was only accidentally discovered by the gang who just happened to be passing by. But the distribution, as mentioned earlier, was cumbersome and would take a ridiculous amount of time to execute, limited as it was to the amusement park. The whole rotating house trick also seems like overkill. Why would you try and hide an entire house from snoopers when a secret passage or hidden room would be more than adequate to conceal any illicit cargo? Once Batman, Robin, and the gang stumbled onto their amusement park hideout, Joker and Penguin limited their response to funhouse tricks like pitfalls, trapdoors, moving floors, and dummies. This is a far cry from conveyor belts and acid baths.
Stay loose, Robin. This is nothing more than an ordinary bedsheet. A cheap one at that.
Batman and I feel the same way about that particular disguise.
Delicious looking bone.
As far as Scooby knows, those are technically human bones. It's nice to know if Shaggy ever dies alone, Scooby will get one last meal. In the end, Joker and Penguin were caught in their own trap after being chased by Scooby-Doo. That's right. The two most notorious criminals in Gotham City not only failed to scare Scooby-Doo, they ran from him. That's Carl the Stuntman territory. F***ing Carl the Stuntman.
How amusing. The Clown Prince of Crime is now the Crown Prince of Crime.
I hate to say it, but this version of the Joker is probably the worst. Worst animated version of the Joker. Oh, for crying out loud. Penguin, however, came across like someone pulled into a friend's drunken scheme and is too polite to say no. This version of the character is reasonably true to his normal presentation. He was impatient and just wanted the money and was clearly sick of dealing with Joker's nonsense.
Why the raucous outburst of mirth, you babbling buffoon?
Why was Penguin stuffing the fake money into the clown? The counterfeit currency was being sent to him and Joker. They weren't sending it out. Mrs. Baker was pretty spry for a little old lady and was surprisingly able to hold her own against Batman and Robin, not to mention 4 teenagers in their prime.
Someone threw a hood over me. The next thing I knew, Batman and Robin were trying to pull me apart.
That's not what happened. Fred got the drop on Mrs. Baker, but she still escaped him. I'm pretty sure he lied to save face because he was too embarrassed to admit a little old lady got the better of him.
Scramble!
Tossing the bouncy ball at the gang was disturbingly effective. For all the rock concerts Fred and the rest attend, do they run away from crowd surfing beach balls too?
Holy basketballs, that's 2 points.
And game.
Like Joker and Penguin, Mrs. Baker is also caught by Scooby, though more by accident than anything else. She even goes through a basketball hoop like Dr. Najib.
Poor Dr. Najib.
Neither the villains nor the Scooby Gang really stand out much in this episode. Joker and Penguin disappoint, though their boss, Mrs. Baker, deserves some credit for being able to lead a crime ring at her age. 2 out of 5 for the operation. This leaves the little old lady and her 2 supervillain henchmen with a due score of 1.7 out of 5.
Batman, like when we get to the Bat Cave, could I get a little snack?
Yes, Shaggy, we'll all have a snack. Bat milk and cookies for everyone.
Bat milk?
Bats are mammals. They do lactate. Kinda weird that Bruce Wayne would take this whole bat thing that far, but rich people do seem to have odd taste when it comes to exotic cuisine. Hanna-Barbera, you cheap motherfuckers.
What's that? Merely sound effects, Robin.
I know that laugh.
Look, you young jackanapes. I'm the one who's supposed to make the jokes.
He's not in the next aisle.
I know I harp on production mistakes in old Scooby-Doo episodes, but this one is just baffling. It's one thing if the colorists forget to paint a portion of an animation cell, but not only is Batman not wearing his gauntlet, he's got a garishly large ring on his finger. I'll bet if I were to scour the entire Hanna-Barbera library, I'd find an episode of another series with this exact same cell, but just colored differently. Reused to avoid having to pay for new footage. Hanna-Barbera, you cheap motherfuckers.
We don't have any Scooby snacks, but how about some Bat snacks as a reward?
Sure, Scooby, good job. Have some Bat snacks as a reward. All covered in dirt and grass. Just like you like them. And that's my ranking of the villains from the first 2 episodes of the new Scooby-Doo movies. I hope to see you next time. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. You know, I can't help but wonder if all the Googling I did about uranium smuggling, how to make weapons-grade uranium, etc., put me on any lists. If only my channel had enough subscribers to get sponsored by one of those VPN services.